I pulled off the two-lane highway because my fuel light had been on too long. The station was a single building with one bright canopy and miles of nothing behind it. My phone said 3:17 a.m. and the air smelled like dust and warm rubber. Inside, the lights were harsh and the shelves were half empty, like the place was slowly giving up. A small radio on the counter hissed between stations, never landing on a song. I told myself I'd pay at the register after I filled up, and I stepped back out to the pumps. The card reader didn't beep or decline, it just went blank, like the screen had fallen asleep. I tried a second time and saw a faint smear across the glass, as if someone's finger had dragged slowly down it. When I looked up, the far pump's nozzle was swaying on its hose, even though there was no wind. I walked closer, telling myself it had been bumped by a passing truck. The nozzle kept rocking in a steady, patient rhythm, like a metronome. Under the canopy, every sound felt amplified. My shoes, the distant hum of the lights, my own breathing. Then the pump display flashed a number and reset, as if someone had just finished a sale. I went to the door to ask the clerk for help, but the handle didn't budge. The sign said open, and the lights inside were on, yet the door held like it was bolted from the other side. I pressed my face to the glass and saw the counter, empty, while the radio hissed louder, like it was trying to cover something up. Behind me, a slow scrape came from the concrete, measured and close. I turned and saw a man standing between the pumps, too far into the shadows for the canopy light to hit him right. He was tall and narrow, wearing a dark jacket that looked wet even in the dry night. His head was tipped down, but his eyes were lifted toward me, fixed and unblinking. I took one step back, and he took one forward, matching me like we were connected by a string. When he reached the edge of the light, I realized his face wasn't dirty. It was smeared with something glossy that caught the glare in uneven streaks. He smiled without changing his eyes, and his mouth opened as if he was about to speak, but no sound came out. I ran along the front of the building toward my car, keys already digging into my palm. The man moved fast without looking like he was moving fast, cutting diagonally across the pumps to meet me. I yanked my driver's door open, and the inside light popped on, just long enough to show a dark shape rising from my back seat. I didn't get in. I slammed the door, sprinted around the hood, and threw myself into the passenger side instead, fumbling across the console to hit the lock. The engine caught on the first turn, like it wanted out as badly as I did, and I peeled away, tires skittering on gritty concrete. In the rearview mirror, the man stood at the edge of the canopy light, and the back seat behind me stayed perfectly dark. Minutes later, when the road finally straightened and my hands stopped shaking, my dashboard chimed softly. I glanced down and saw my fuel gauge drop, 1 bar at a time, even though I hadn't driven far enough to burn it. Then, in the mirror, I saw the station's canopy lights blink once, like a slow, deliberate wink, long after it should have been out of sight. I checked into the motel because the highway signs promised a room, and I couldn't keep my eyes open. It was a low strip of doors facing a parking lot, lit by a buzzing orange pole light. The clerk barely looked up when he slid my keycard across the counter. My room smelled like stale cleaner and old air conditioning. The bedspread had that shiny pattern that never feels dry, and the curtains didn't quite meet in the middle. I set my bag down, kicked off my shoes, and heard a soft click from the wall behind the headboard. At first, I thought it was the AC cycling, but the sound came again. 2 quick taps, then silence. I leaned close to the wallpaper and noticed a thin seam where it had been patched. When I turned toward the bathroom, the vent cover above the shower trembled once, like something had brushed it from the other side. I told myself it was the fan settling and tried to distract my brain with normal routines. Water ran, the sink gurgled, and the neon sign outside painted the room in faint pulses. Still, the tapping returned, closer now, as if it had moved from behind the bed to the wall beside the nightstand. Then the TV flickered on by itself, volume at 0, showing a blue menu screen. I grabbed the remote and turned it off, and the room fell into that heavy quiet that makes every sound feel intentional. The keycard latch clicked once without the handle moving, like someone swiped a card from the other side. I stepped back and checked the deadbolt, pressing it hard until it was fully seated. From the wall, a slow drag followed, like fabric sliding across something rough. I pulled the dresser away from the patched seam, heart hammering, expecting mold or broken drywall. Instead, a narrow rectangle of darkness stared back at me, perfectly cut, like an intentional opening. In that black gap, an eye appeared, wet and bright, watching me from inches away. I froze, and the eye blinked, calm as if it had all the time in the world. A fingertip slid into view, hooking the edge of the opening from the inside. The wall flexed, and the patched strip shifted outward, widening just enough for a nose and cheekbone to press through. I saw skin stretched tight, and a grin forming where no light should reach. I backed toward the door, keeping my gaze locked on that opening. The patch tore with a quiet rip, and an arm pushed through, reaching blind toward the bed like it already knew the room's layout. I lunged for the handle, but the latch snapped shut again, hard, before I could pull it open. Something on the other side of the wall made a pleased, breathy sound, right at ear level. I threw my shoulder into the door until the deadbolt shuddered and the frame groaned. The second hit cracked it enough for the latch to slip, and I spilled out into the walkway, barefoot and shaking. I sprinted to the office, slamming my palms on the window until the clerk finally looked up. When I turned back, my room's curtains were parted, and a pale face stared out from behind the glass, pressed close like it wanted me to see it leave the wall and choose the window instead. I was trying to make up time, but the night had gone thick and empty in that way that makes miles feel fake. When the rest area sign appeared, I took it without thinking, craving a break from the headlights and my own thoughts. The exit ramp curled into darkness, and my tires rolled onto a lot that looked half forgotten. Only one lamppost worked, casting a white circle over cracked pavement and a few dead vending machines. The building had reflective tape on the doors and a notice taped inside the glass, but I didn't bother reading it. I just wanted a bathroom and a quick splash of water. As I crossed the lot, the lamppost buzzed and dimmed, and something inside the building knocked once, sharp, like a fist against tile. I stopped at the entrance, listening. The knock came again, followed by a soft, shuffling sound, as if someone was shifting their weight behind the door. I tried the handle, and it opened with an easy swing that didn't match the warning in my head. The air inside was colder than outside, and it smelled faintly metallic. The hallway lights were on, but they didn't reach the corners, leaving pockets of grey. The restroom signs pointed left and right, and I chose the one closest to the light. A stall door hung half open, rocking gently like it had just been pushed. Then, from deeper in the building, I heard a slow exhale, too long to be a normal sigh. I told myself someone else had pulled in behind me and was messing around, and I didn't want trouble. I backed out into the hall and headed toward the exit, already planning to leave. Halfway there, the front doors clicked, and the metal push bar refused to move, as if something had jammed it from outside. The working lamppost in the lot blinked, and the darkness beyond the glass turned solid. I turned back toward the hall, and that's when I saw her at the far end, under a light that hadn't been on a second earlier. She wore a thin, pale coat that hung wrong, like it didn't belong on a body that shape. Her hair was stringy and dark, and her face looked smooth at first, until she lifted her chin, and I saw the wet shine where eyes should have been, set too deep and too close together. She stood perfectly still, but her shoulders rose and fell like she was smelling me. I tried to speak, but my throat locked up, and the sound came out as a small breath. Her head snapped slightly to the side, listening, and then she moved, fast and quiet, closing the distance without footfalls. I ran, my shoes slapping tile, and the overhead lights popped off in sequence behind me like a fuse burning down. Her breathing followed right at my back, close enough to warm the air at my neck. I threw myself against a side door marked "Staff Only," and it burst open into a cramped service corridor. I didn't think, just sprinted, shoulder-checking through a second door that led to the back of the building. Cold air hit my face, and I stumbled into the lot, lunging for my car. The moment I slammed the door and turned the key, the lamppost flared bright, and in that white circle, she stood beside my trunk, one hand lifted as if she'd almost caught the car itself. I drove until the rest area was nothing but a memory in my mirrors, and the normal highway lights returned in long rows. At the next well-lit exit, I pulled into a busy truck stop and forced myself to breathe. When I got out to steady my legs, I noticed something on my rear window. A single wet streak, dragged downward from the top edge like a fingertip testing the glass. Under the fluorescent lights, it gleamed fresh, as if it had happened seconds ago.